Good morning. It's the first day of March, and technically speaking, I guess that's the meteorological start of spring. We have a few more weeks to go before we actually see spring here, but today's a good day to get out and start to trim back some of my shrubs and other things that I want to get cut back before they really start to wake up for the spring. Now in my area this coming week, after right now it's about in the low 20s, so it's still pretty chilly, but starting I think tomorrow and going through the rest of the week, we're going to get above freezing starting at night, or I'm sorry, during the day, and then we'll stay below freezing for a couple of days at night. And that is the signal that sort of triggers the wakening up of our trees and shrubs in my area. When you get those nights above freezing and I'm sorry, I keep saying it wrong. The daytime temperature is above 32 degrees Fahrenheit and the nighttime temperature is below freezing. Now, as we get towards the end of the week, what's going to happen is it's going to stay in the 40s overnight. So that sap that's been down in the roots of the shrubs and trees is just going to keep moving. So I think after next week, we're going to see a big jump in all those signs of spring. But I wanted to start with this shrub right here. I'll get you a little closer here in a second, but this is a cranberry viburnum. I'll put the species name up here. And I've been struggling with this one. When I first put it in, it started looking really good, and then one of the main shoot or branches or main growth pieces broke off, and then it's just been kind of growing really crazy. And right here you can see, get my hand right here, this branch that's going very out kind of radically on a diagonal is going out into the pathway, and I want to go ahead and trim that back. And these are pretty forgiving. Last year this entire shrub I cut back really low and it grows really well. It's on the north side of my house, but I'm gonna start with trimming back this piece right here, and I'll get you in close and show you how I make a decision on where to make a cut, and then we'll keep track of it during the growing season. All right, so this is a better look at the cranberry viburnum, and you can kind of see, actually, I mean, a lot of this growth right here on the right hand side is all from last year. It's kind of crazy. The darker center branch you can see is the older, more established one, but what I'm trying to do is get this trained to be more of an upright column shaped shrub and not so scraggly and all over the place. So let me show you where I'm going to cut. Down here at the base of the shrub where these branches are coming out here, I'm going to trim back both of those, and I'm going to trim back pretty close to the main trunk down there, just above. See if I can get a gooder. Sorry if I'm making you seasick there. So right here, I mean, I'm tempted to cut it all the way back just because it's leaning so far. And then what will happen usually is if I cut near one of the buds, so that's, get it to focus a little better. There we go. Oh, doesn't like that. This year's leaves will grow from there. And if I cut just above where one of those buds are, it should hopefully, you know, if I'm doing it down here, it'll grow up. But as I look at this, I feel like if I don't cut it back all the way to the main trunk, this little set of buds right here will just keep growing out to the left. So we'll go ahead and give it a shot. So here's a second cranberry viburnum. Again, you can see it's a little fuller. It may get a little bit more sun, but it also has some messy points in here where there's a little bit of a spaghetti bowl mess going on down here. Branches crossing each other up in this area. So I'm going to do a little bit of pruning, more selective pruning on this one. started with for the spring. Cleaned it up a little bit. And then cleaned it up a little bit, and we'll see how it goes for this growing season. And it's just one of my little garden chores as we go along into the month of March. I'll be doing a few more. Okay, so the next set of things I have to do are the hydrangeas here in the front. Same thing as what we did earlier with the cranberries, is I'm just trimming them back to where I find a set of buds, and then what will happen is as it starts to bud out or to sprout and grow this year, they won't grow from where the height they're at now, but instead will grow from a lower height so they don't get too big on me for the rest of the season. So I'm going to show you what those buds look like in just a little bit, where I'm cutting to, and so you can get a closer look. Again, I'm not a professional. I just do what I've been doing, and so far for like the last 8 years or so, got some cars going by. The hydrangeas keep coming back, so I think we'll be okay. All right, so this is a closer up look at the hydrangeas. You can see where I've cut the stems in past years. And the nice thing about these, even though they're not a native plant, see if I can get... There we go. See how they have some hollow stems? Our native bees will use this for nesting, so I like to leave these up. But I wanted to show you where I'm going to trim to this year. Kind of right here. You can see there's an opposite set of buds here for this year's new leaves. And I will cut just above that set of buds. And what will happen is that the shrub will then realize, you know, it's been pruned in some way, and then I don't understand how it all works. I think it has something to do with hormones in the plant, growth hormones, that instead of just being little side leaf buds, this will turn into, like, it'll grow taller. So this is another set of buds right here, but I don't want this to be too tall, so I'm going to cut back to about here. And I don't do them all exactly the same length. I vary it a little bit so you get more of a loose look to the shrub. And I've done this every year, and they always bloom. So my guess is that these hydrangeas bloom on new wood, and that's one of the things that we'll talk about in a little bit about pruning, is figuring out if what you're going to prune, if it flowers or sets fruit on new wood or old wood. That will determine when you do your pruning. So let's get to it. Take some of this dead stuff that I just cut off the shrubs out front, and I'm going to add some of it to my compost pile. I've been throwing a lot of vegetable peelings and things like that in here this winter, fruit, and so there's a big layer of what we call greens in compost, and I need a layer of brown. So I've collected up some of the sticks and things, I think, from the stuff from the cranberry is just a little too woody for me right now for this compost bin, so I'm going to take more of the hydrangea stems because they'll break down faster. Will also make places in the, like air pockets in the compost to help it with airflow and decomposition once everything thaws out and wakes up again. looks good, and a nice thick layer of that. I try to do like a rough ratio of 1 part green to 3 parts brown. So you know, all the green stuff like the vegetable peelings and things like that was a layer about that thick. So I put a layer about that thick with the browns in, and I just keep doing that. Once everything starts to thaw out later in the spring, there's a little trap door down here. I can get a spade out or my pitchfork, and I just turn it by taking stuff from the bottom and throwing it on top. And I just do that periodically through the season, and then I let it sit for a while. And usually in the fall I can get maybe a 5-gallon bucket full of compost, which is great, and I throw that onto the garden to put the garden to bed for winter. So that's it for this chore, and now it's time to move on to another chore behind the garage. So this project's a big one. It's going to take me a few days. I don't know if you could tell here, but I trimmed back several branches off of an oak tree earlier in January, and now I have to deal with those branches. So some of them I'm going to need a saw, but for some of the tips here, I'm just going to start trimming back some of the smaller pieces so I can get things contained a little bit before it gets too out of hand or things start to grow up back here, so I can have everything tidied up. So we'll get going. So what I'll do with these branches is I'm going to pile them up along the fence in the driveway, and I'll let them hang out and dry out and that kind of stuff, and then I'll probably end up using them to burn for firewood. But I wanted to show you this little growth here on the stem that's called a gall, and that happens when an insect lays an egg in the stem, and the plant tissues grow around it to protect the plant, and then it makes a little home for the insect. So another reason to kind of leave these in the driveway is to just let whatever little insect is in here complete its life cycle. The bigger branches that were a little more challenging to work on behind the garage, and I'm going to try and trim them down a little bit here. Anything I can get with these loppers is what I'll do now. And then anything that's too big I'll have to saw at another time, and I'll get them into like little fire pit size logs, and I'll throw them in the garage at some point to dry out further. I didn't do this back in January just because it was really cold, and I did it like right after the new year to make sure that it was going to stay cold enough long enough so that I didn't get any disease into the oak tree. And I didn't want to stack things here in the driveway because it makes it harder to clear when we get snow. Now it's not completely out of the question that we would get a few inches of snow between now and middle of May when our last frost date is, but typically when we do get snow after March 1st, it usually melts fairly quickly. So, and I looked at the forecast for the next week. I'm hoping any precipitation we're getting for the next 10 days is going to be rain. So I feel pretty good about staging these branches out here and them not being in the way of my snow removal. So yeah, I'll just get to it.